Welcome to a milk market tidbit for the April federal milk marketing data that the USDA released this week. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones, and I'm recording this on Sunday, June 16th, which is also Father's Day. So I wish everybody a happy Father's Day. All right, so here's the overview that I've kind of come up with. The statistical uniform prices averaged across the country about $19.78, and that was up $1.54 from last month. So very nice increase in milk prices. There was significant class 4 depooling, and my comment is not for long because we may not see that here for the next 2 months. Pooled class 1 and class 2 were both down, but one of the things that we got to really focus on is that class 3 was actually up. Now, month over month production was down, and I've got to ask the question of what happened in Arizona, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And percent fat was seasonally down just a little bit. All right, so here's our statistical uniform prices. As I said, they were up $1.54. We've got $20 really across the southern section, more or less. The lowest is Minnesota, Wisconsin at 1874. But let's look at how these things actually changed. Now, there was a couple things that really went on. Class 3 is up $3. So that was a huge increase. So Minnesota, Wisconsin is going to be up, $2.80 or something like that. Phenomenal. Now, class 1 price came down. So that means in the southeast, prices came down just a little bit, and there will continue to be significant depooling of class 4, which why wouldn't you if that's at $20.50 and class 3 is at $18.55. So again, that's when depooling happens. But as I said, that may not continue on for a little bit because at one point this last week, I believe class 3 was actually trading above class 4, but it retreated here just a little bit. And the best way to look at this is actually to look at the difference and then look at what differences are outside of 75 cents. And so here are these two lines. Anytime you're within this circle, you're probably not going to be depooling. So July, August, September, we may not see depooling. But right now, if we look at the particularly first part of 2025, we're going to have some significant depooling. What I love about the federal milk marketing data, it gives me an idea as to how milk production changed month over month, but this is probably some of the squirreliest data I've seen in a while. So let's just kind of run through this. Overall, production is down about 1.75% compared to April. A big piece of that is driven by Arizona. Arizona is down 27%. And I have no idea what happened there. I went back and rechecked the data to make sure there wasn't a data entry error, but it does not appear to be at this point. Class 1 is down about 5%. That's not good for overall demand. Class 2 was actually down about 5%, and part of what happened in Arizona is they significantly reduced their Class 2. Now, one of the things that to me is starting to ask some questions is class 3 was actually up about 1%. So if we look at the middle section, it was up 102. We look at California, it was up 100. If you take the northern sections, they're all, 99.9, 99.6. So really, if you go to the northern sections of production held pretty good. It's the southern part that did not, and the heat does. Building there, northern Florida is in the 90s pretty heavily. So what could happen to Arizona? So number one, this is plant data, so you can move milk around, but if it went from one federal order to the other, it would stay in. But the other option is it could have moved to Idaho, for example, and in that case, it would have actually been pulled out of the federal order because there are no orders. Same thing, some of these areas up here, if they were pulling milk to help plants out, then that's going to pull it out of the federal order totally. But if, for example, you take milk from New York and move it to Florida, it stays in the federal order. So I'll just leave that all with you and say I don't know exactly what's going on. And here is the overview of, on a pound basis, to how the different classes changed. Classes 1, 2, and 4 didn't change significantly, but overall, total came down. Now, When we look at how May normally is, it's about 0.5% down from April. So my guess right now is we're going to be a little lower than that. So if we end up at 99%, that's going to be a 1.4% decrease year over year. But I only do that because I think there are some headwinds with cow numbers. But when I put that into my model and tried to figure out what milk per cow and cow numbers had to look like to do that, it just didn't make any sense. So what I'm really probably going to hedge my bet and say we're going to be down 0.5% plus or minus 0.5% because the data is not clear at all. If we look at class 4, we're just continuing to heavily depool. We're only utilizing 20% of our capacity in the federal order. That doesn't mean that we're short on class 4, it's just being depooled. But here's class 3. Here is our peak up here, about 248 million pounds a day. We're at 98% of that. We're only off by 4 million pounds a day, and we're higher on a poundage basis year over year class 3 utilization. So that to me is starting to feed into the narrative about new cheese plants and cheese plant capacity. I'm going to spend a lot more time discussing this in my weekly podcast. If you're interested, just send me an email. I'll show you how to subscribe to that. Those come out on Sunday. They're about 20 minutes long, and they do have a $200 a year subscription. All right, if we just look at the percentages, class 1 is around 26%. That's similar to May of 23, so not a big change. Again, the Southeast is very high class 1. Minnesota, Wisconsin, very low. Class 3, Minnesota, Wisconsin is predominantly class 3. It's about 57-58%. Again, that's going to change with class 4 depooling, because if you pull class 4 out, then class 3 is going to go up. And then our class 4 for just completion is about 6.7%. So there's room for increasing that in the pool. Texas is 0.3%. Fat values came down a little bit, about 1/10. Still reasonably strong, a lot of 4s, but we are popping 3s in Arizona, in Florida, where some of the heat is. Order 5 here in the mid-Atlantic area. Protein is also reasonably strong. We always have the lowest in the Northeast at 315. The highest is always in the Northwest at 34. So these are strong, but they're not increasing the way that fat has been over time. This next week, we're going to have a holiday on Wednesday, so the markets are going to be closed as far as I know. Some of the other data coming out is we're going to have a global dairy trade. We're going to have our usual national dairy sales report, but a day late. We'll get the advanced prices, and then we're going to start getting some data with the milk production report on Friday. All right, that's it for me, and I'll get you another report when this milk production report comes out on Friday.